Hey guys, welcome to my YouTube channel. Today we're going to talk about the sequencing of rehab projects on a residential property. I have another video that talks about identifying the scope, so I'm going to probably piggyback off of that video, how you identify the scope on the tasks associated with rehabbing a project. This one focuses more on a similar set of tasks. It touches on the sequencing of these tasks, right? That's important. I'll give you an example. I'm not going to blow up the tasks, but because a rehab project it can vary from project to project. And so I want to just talk about the overarching tasks that are associated with the rehab of a house, right? An example is you cannot put your rug on the floor before you paint, right? So you want to paint before you put the rug, right? Why? Because if you put the rug first, and then you start painting, paint can get in your rug, right? And so that's sequencing. So I want to talk about that from start to finish to give you an idea conceptually how rehab projects are done, right? And some of these items may shift depending on what contractor you use, but not far off from what I'm gonna share, right? So the first thing I think I talked about in my previous video on how to project manage a rehab, or I'm not sure what the name of the video was basically establishing the scope. So once you establish the scope, for all intents and purposes, in this video, we're talking about a gut rehab. What's a gut rehab? When you gut out the house. What does it mean when you gut out the house? Is when you break down all the walls and all you have is a studs, right? Studs meaning the framing, the wooden framing in a house. Some studs you may have to get rid of because of, it could be, they may have water damage, or they may have termites, whatever it is, right? Some of them you may be able to salvage, but for all intents and purposes, let's just pretend we're going to get rid of the entire thing, right? We want everything brand new from soup to nuts to the studs, and we're gonna do that's the scope of our project. But before we get there, right, what's critical, you cannot start a project of that magnitude, because some contractors or some people on social media or some people in general will say, oh, that's cosmetic work. It's not cosmetic work when you're freaking demolishing an entire house, right? Oh, that's just cosmetic. I don't care if you build a house from the ground up, where you bought the land and you build it from the ground up. Yeah, there are more risks and more work or associated with that, but you cannot diminish a total gut job into cosmetic work, right? Like it's oversimplifying it, and I've seen that a lot, and it doesn't piss me off. It's just like, get your head out of your ass. I know you've done 100 of these, but this is not cosmetic work, right? Anyway, so the point I'm trying to make is, before you even get there, when you establish your scope, is you want to get your administrative part in order, right? What do I mean by that? You want to get your permits in order. You want to get your architect drawings approved and sealed by the city or the county that you're going to be doing this rehab on. You want to make sure that all that paperwork is in order before you can even start, right? Because what you don't want is you begin demoing, or you begin, putting the roof, and you don't have a sticker on your window that says that you're permitted to do this type of work. You got to remember, no social media person is going to have your back when the city comes after you and doesn't see a permit on your window, or doesn't see a permit that you can show them on your phone that you're permitted to do the type of work you're doing on the house, right? In this particular case, a demo, right? So, which is why I get a little bent out of shape when I hear a lot of these people, oh, that's just cosmetic work. If you need a permit, rule of thumb, if you need a permit, it's not cosmetic work. Put it to you that way, right? So after you established everything, you got your permit, your architect is sealed and approved by the city, right? The first thing you do is demo. So you want to hire people to do your demolition work. That's done. After that's done, the next, again, this is sequence, right? After that's done, you want to do your framing. What is framing? Framing is based on your drawings, right? You got to go with what your drawings have. You cannot deviate from your drawings. Here's why you cannot deviate from your drawings. Because when the city does the inspection of the framing, they're gonna go by what your drawing has. So say you have 3 bedrooms in your drawings, and all of a sudden you have 1 master bedroom and 1 other master suite that doesn't align to what the drawing has. The city is gonna now require revised drawings, and you're gonna have to pay your architect for revised drawings, which is expensive, right? So you want to make sure you stick to what you decide to some degree. Obviously, there's some wiggle room for flexibility, but very, very little. So you want to make sure that you stick to what your drawing has. So you do the demo, then you do the framing. The framing needs to match what your drawing has, right? Get a good frame of carpet. You know, guys that are great in carpentry do this type of job very well. Where your rooms are going to be, where your bathroom is going to be, where your kitchen is going to be. So you have, obviously you have an open space, and you can begin sort of designing based on your spec and on your design document what goes where. So you did the framing. The next piece of item you have, if the house requires roofing, you can do that in parallel. So you can do the roofing in parallel, right? Depending on how damaged the roof is. If the roof is extremely damaged, you may need to add some joists. You may need to add some plywood in there. You may have to do the whole roof from beginning to end. That may cost you between $7,000, sometimes even $30,000, depending on how big the roof is, depending on how much joist you need, depending on how much beams you need. So roof and framing, you can work on these things in parallel. What do I mean by parallel? At the same time. You can work on these things at the same time, right? You may want to seal the roof if you don't have a roof. If you have a damaged roof and you can maybe seal it with some plastic and work on the framing, fine. But if you don't have a roof, I will probably suggest to begin the roof first, and then in parallel start doing your framing as you're building out the roof. So you have that in place, right? You have the roof. Then you're gonna move into some of the exterior aspects of the house, right? You want to start sealing your house. You want to start protecting your house. So you want to start changing some of the windows off the house, because you already have the framing. So the outside of the window, the framing of the windows, is already have been done. So you want to now begin adding windows to your house, adding security to your house, whether that's an alarm or camera or whatever the case may be. But you want to begin securing your house, right? You work on the exterior, so you work on some windows. If there's a brick house, I don't know if you want to begin acid washing your house, or if you want to add siding, you may want to start adding the siding in the windows and the doors to your house, right, at this point. Even if it's framed inside, right, you want to start adding these things to your house. Then you want to work on the HVAC, right? Because now or your mechanicals, should I say. Not your HVAC, but your mechanicals. So now you have your framing, the house is wide open. Obviously you have your windows, you have your siding. Now the house is wide open. This is the opportunity to begin actually the only opportunity you have to really, based on your drawings, begin with your mechanical work, which is your HVAC, plumbing, and electrical. Where your wires are gonna go, remember, because it's open already, right? So now you have your electrician, you have your plumber, you have your HVAC guy. They're running wires based on your drawings. So the drawings, the wires, the lighting in the room, the lighting in the kitchen, the lighting in the living room, the lighting in the basement, the lighting in the attic, or whatever the case may be, they have to run those wires, but they have a concept already because of your framing. How the framing is completed, they run in those wires through the house on where you want your lighting, right? You want to make sure you pay very close attention to that. So your mechanicals, right? You want to do your rough-ins from a plumbing perspective. Where your pipes are going to run from and to. How they're going to go from top to bottom if it's a two to three story house. Where the exchanges are going to be, right? You want to make sure you have all that sort of ironed out at that point. Remember, they have an open concept at this point. And then your HVAC, all your HVAC stuff, your duct work, all of that stuff is going to be done at this point, all your mechanicals. I'm not even adding approvals, right? You got to remember, every stage, framing needs to be approved by the city because they're going to look at your joint. Your mechanicals need to be approved by the city, right? Pressure tested. Make sure that the plumbing and the HVAC and the electrical and the wires and everything is done up to city code. So you don't just move along. You get things every in each of these stages. You want to get them approved by the city, and you want to put that in your contract and your scope of work. That each of these items, big ticket items, roofing needs to be approved by the city, electrical approved by the city, and HVAC needs approved by the city. Plumbing approved by the city. And you want to get your stickers that they got approved, right? So these things are, and that's what takes a lot of the time, unless you have good relationships with the city. Excuse me, I can't even speak today. But those items you want to get approved. You don't want to play around with those items, especially electrical, because if you get a unlicensed electrician, you run the risk of him not knowing city code, him not knowing wires, and you could put yourself at risk with your house blowing up or getting burned down, right? It's a lot of power that's being exchanged when you are doing HVAC. And so you have your mechanicals. After you have your mechanicals, then you need to insulate the house, right? So you want to start adding insulation. You can do two types of insulation. You can do the spray insulation, right? Which is, it seems to be a little more concise, more dependent on, it all depends, right? I tend not to do that with row housing. I just add the rolls of insulation. Depending on what it is. Some people prefer the spray insulation. Some people add both to a certain degree, but it has to be up to city code. You cannot just arbitrarily add insulation, right? You got to add either the R49s in the roof or R31s in the walls or R19s on the wall, depending on what the city or county codes are. Those insulations now need to match, you know, those regulatory or those regulations from the city or county. So now you insulate your house. So you have the insulation done, and now so after it's insulated and it's inspected, right? Each of these stages that I've named, those big ticket items, roofing, framing, MEPs, installations, those 4 ticket items need to be approved by the city or county. You want to hold yourself accountable. You want to hold your contractor accountable. You want to hold his subs accountable. You want to hold all these people accountable, that it needs to be approved by the city. I think you end up paying in the long run if you try to take shortcuts with a big rehab of this magnitude. Obviously, then you start buying your sheetrock, drywall, to begin sealing everything in the house. Notice how I started in that sequence, right? And I'll put the sequence down below, but again, you have to blow these things more, like framing, right? You have to blow it up. MEPs, you have to blow it up. When I say blow it up, decompose it, right? Where do you want your water tanks? What do you want your, how do you want your pipes run? Are they matching your drawings? Are they matching all these different things, right? What do you want your vents? You have to be very specific. You cannot you cannot allow, I wouldn't even recommend allowing your contractor or your plumber or your HVAC guy to go rogue. You have to specify what you want these things on your drawing. And that goes before you even begin work, right? So you establish those things. So now we're up to the drywall part. So now you're sealing everything. After it's all been approved, city gave you the thumbs up, you can now begin sealing. So now you begin adding your sheetrock, begin sealing with compound, begin sanding, making sure things are starting to come together. And then you go into your, after sheetrock, you begin painting, right? Do not add your floors until you completed painting. Do not add your cabinets until after you completed painting, right? I know it seems logical, but trust me, a lot of these contractors, let's just say they're not the brightest bulb on a tanning bed, right? Or they're not the brightest crayon in the box. I've seen some stuff and I'm like, why would you do that? Like I have to go. Why would you do that? Why would you right? Like, come on. So you want to make sure that these things are done in that sequence. And then lastly, after you put your sheetrock, and then you have your so you have your sheetrock, you completed that portion, you painted. You have your cabinets. You start putting your flooring. Flooring is very delicate because a house sometimes seems to contract and expand. So you want to make sure that someone that's doing the flooring understands that, and everyone should understand that, right? That a house contracts depending on the weather. I had a guy put flooring on me one time. Kid you not. I wish I were joking when I say this. He put flooring on one of the houses one time, and it was the middle of summer. I think the house contracted. And I walk in the house, and the floors were like mountains. Like, right? Because you're supposed to leave a gap. You're supposed to leave a space between the molding and the floor, and either add an adhesive, or you're supposed to have some space. Because what ends up happening is, I think in the heat, the house contracts, and when it gets cold, it expands. And so, if your floors are jammed into the wall, right, in the winter, once the house starts contracting, the floors are going to start lifting up, and that is not a good look. That is, and he tried to nail them in on the floor. Long story, you live and learn. That really set me. You begin doing. You can do these things in parallel. You can begin doing your flooring, then you do your interior doors, your crown molding, your bathroom with the tiles and ceramic tiles and things of that nature. So you see how things are sort of coming along. You begin putting your vanity sets after you put in your floors and things like that. So things are starting to come along at this point, and this is where you start getting excited, because you see that something went from nothing to now looking really, really nice. And a project like this can take between 4 to 6 months, depending on how good your contractors are. If you have a good team of people that are doing this, if you have a good team of relationships in a city to administer your permits and your inspections at a fast pace or very quickly. So now you're painting your flooring, you're putting your interior doors, your cabinets, your tiles in your bathroom and your kitchen. So you have all these things so that you can, at the very end, when you have painted and put your floors already, some of these things can be done in parallel. But you want to be careful not to damage what you already put in place, right? You want to be very careful. Things are very important. And after that, you're done, right? You're done, and you do a walkthrough there's going to be spots that are missed. So you get your notepad, you start walking through things that look off to you, and you get your guys back to fix them. Your lighting, your switches. Don't get those, never mind. I was going to go into, don't get those switches that go up and down. You can get the nice fancy ones, but it's up to you. I think it makes it look more modern if you do which I agree on. I went to a class and they talked about this. Which I agree with 100%, and having to do a lot of these rehabs, or some of these rehabs. I'm not I've done enough of them, but the point I'm trying to make is you want to make sure it looks nice, even if it's in a C neighborhood. You want to make it look really, really nice, really appealing, at least in the eye. And then that's the house, and if you have within scope, you have landscaping work. You can always do that towards the end or you can do it towards the end, because the fact of the matter is you don't want garbage coming in and out of your house, because you're going to be putting the materials in and out, and then your landscaping outside is ruined, right? So you want the landscaping to also be towards the end of the project. But that's it, guys, from start to finish. I'm hoping that you found this video useful, with good information. I'm not going to go into the details. I'm not going to go into the details of blowing up a lot of these tasks, but at least it gives you a concept from start to finish on on how to sequence these items. Once you sequence them, you start putting specifics on them as per your drawings. If you found this video useful, please like and subscribe and share. I really appreciate it. Handling a project of this magnitude is very, very difficult at the beginning, but then it just comes second nature the more of them you do. Again, if you found this useful, guys, like I said, like, subscribe, share.